Hi, and welcome to a special edition. And wow, we got an all-star lineup tonight. We're broadcasting this from the Mouthwash channel, but we also have Watson Pernier on. He is with Mojo Radio. And then Joshua Cummings, he's with Faith, Family, and Politics. So, and then we have our special guest, Jamie Reitenour. She had their group and her had asked us to host this podcast and ask her some questions, some post-debate, the one that she got on, and other things. So I think you'll find it interesting. We have some good questions for tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on our first podcaster. Actually, he's a national broadcaster. So, podcasting may be just a little lower than that. But let's bring on Watson. And Watson, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really well, brother. Thank you for having me on. Really excited to just reaffirm everyone that Jamie Reitenour is the voice for the people, and the vote that you need to make on this next primary election. All
right. Well, we know where your cards are. You just put them right there on the table. That's great. Now I'm going to bring on Josh. Let's see. Hey, Josh, how are you doing tonight? Is it okay to call you Josh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Usually go by that anyway. Mama calls me Joshua.
Well, that's when you're in trouble. I know.
That's right.
Late for dinner or whatever. So,
right.
But so how are you doing tonight?
Doing all right. A little tired from work, but that's normal, right?
Yeah, that's right. You're young. He's a young kid, Watson. Don't let him give us that business there. So,
but don't let the young face fool you. I'm a little older than I look.
Yeah. So let's. I'm going to go ahead and shift this out here to that. Watson, tell our viewers about your broadcast and what happens. What goes on there in this? Because I've been on your show and you've been on mine. So tell our viewers.
I'm blessed to be one of the many hosts on Mojo 50 Radio. My program's called Battle for Freedom that comes on Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's just a great opportunity for me to try and talk about the news and deal with everything from a biblical perspective. And Wednesdays are the days that I go into a more in-depth version of looking what the word of God has to say. So like this past Wednesday and for the next several Wednesdays, I'll be doing Torah time. Or just teaching from the Bible from a biblical perspective and helping everyone build a biblical worldview.
Yep. That's awesome. And you need to check his show out on Mojo 50. And you're on the Facebook and all sorts of stuff, right? You just
Correct.
Look it
up. Facebook and Rumble, you can catch me there.
Yep. You'll see Watson's smiling face on there. So Josh, tell our viewers a little bit about Faith, Family, and Politics.
So it's just one of many shows we actually have out of my little home studio here. Revolver Broadcasting is our company. So if you want to check out our website, revolverbroadcasting.com, you can see most of our shows there. We're on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and anywhere you download your audio podcasts. So we're pretty much everywhere to be able to find us. On Faith, Family, and Politics, what we do, it's an hour and a half long program. And generally I'm the host. Every now and again, we bring in a little guest host, but we do the first half hour as the faith portion. So we do like kind of a pseudo message out of the Bible, and we discuss that topic, and then we go into the family portion, the second half hour, and sometimes it's just however the conversation flows, but other times we'll get a main topic, and then we'll kind of stick it to back to the faith message at the beginning, and we talk about what we recently went through, or maybe an old family story, something to make you laugh or cry, or however it goes, and then the last half hour, sometimes longer because it's the politics portion. We have 3 different national news articles that we pull and we discuss them.
Yeah, that's what's happening with ours. My show's been steadily growing. Watson's show's been steadily growing and been around, and your show's growing. I think people are, we're filling a vacuum of the mainstream media, not really sitting down and talking with people. And tonight we're going to have Jamie Reitenour on. She's like big time running for the governor, got all these signatures, and they've been shutting doors on her face and not letting her in debates and all this. And yet here she is. And this was her idea, to get all 3 of us together. And, we have between us, we have a pretty good audience. And our audience is here tonight. If you are on our broadcast, you can ask a question in the chat. And you can do that on YouTube. Even Twitter, I think, can do that. But Facebook's most of where that happens. So if you have a question you want to ask Jamie, fire it up there. And if it doesn't have any cuss words in it, we might put it up. So, but without any further ado, let's bring on our guest here, the reason we're here. So let's see. Jamie Reitenour, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for doing this tonight. I just love that you guys have all come together You are very right when you say you're filling a vacuum. That is definitely true. You are filling a vacuum where we can see that the news lacks, because a lot of times it's news and the facts become their opinion instead of the facts. And so I heard someone recently talking about, should people go negative? And, I think that there has to be a real discernment for what is negative and what is just true. And so I appreciate you guys speaking of what is true. And that helps the people have real conversation, which is what we need to have healthy societies. So thank you so much for doing this evening. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it's our pleasure, and it is a labor of love for us, because I know we were talking before the show about how much we get paid for doing this, but you either love doing this or you don't, and I think that your candidacy is a lot like raise your hand if you get paid. I don't know, Mojo Radio might have some money, but yeah, so it's preaching to the choir tonight, but I appreciate the fact that I got put in with these two gentlemen and their biblical perspective, because ours is strictly a political show. But I try to base a lot of my stuff on biblical theory. I like Proverbs a lot. Like you said, the negative: roll a stone up the hill, it'll roll back on you. Dig a pit for somebody else, and you'll fall in it. So be careful what you wish for as far as what you're trying to do on that. So did you get that link, Watson, to share? Okay. All right. So I think we're all good to go. Joshua, did you get the link there to share? It's in the private chat.
My producer has it.
Okay. Oh, he's got a producer, Watson. Your producer's like 8 years old, isn't she? All right. Well, let's jump into this. Jamie, we'll give you an opening statement here. I won't be like the debate team and say we're just going to throw stuff at you. We're not going to promise this or that, but do a little opening statement for maybe somebody that's watching this for the first time and says, "Who the heck is Jamie Reitenour?"
Sure, I'd love to do that. My name is Jamie Reitenour, and I'm running for governor here in the state of Indiana. It's my great honor and pleasure to be one that is running for governor in such a beautiful state. This is a beautiful state full of people that have faith, that desire freedom. We know for sure that this is a generational state. And so it has been my pleasure, as I was called in 6 years ago, and that was confirmed 4 years later. I began to go through the book of Nehemiah and use Nehemiah as my map as to how I would lead the state as governor. And part of leading is always getting to know the people you're leading. And so I have spent the last 2.5 years on the ground. I'm like the walking survey in the state of Indiana. I have heard Hoosier voices, and we believe that we have come up with policies that are going to help move this state forward to reach its destiny. We believe that Indiana is set apart, that she can be the training capital of the United States of America. We believe that the companies that are courting Indiana to come here with their billions of dollars bring with them their lobbyists and oftentimes bring ideology that is not fitting for the state of Indiana. What we are encouraging is for everyone that believes in freedom, that knows the importance of faith, that understands that whether you are in agreement with the fact that I love Jesus and I promote the Bible everywhere I go, because that's where I get my decision making. I think everybody understands that now when you elect politicians, you're not just electing the politician, you're electing their belief system. And so now is the time to pay attention. I look forward to this conversation. I encourage you to go to jamie4ingov.com. Choose your social media. We have worked for 2.5 years to answer every question that you have. And if you've got something new, we're happy to answer your questions, because being in government is about serving the people. It is not that government is over the people. We, the people, are over the government. And so it is my job to facilitate an environment for Indiana to succeed. I believe that the power belongs in the hands of the people. And as a Christian, I believe if the people choose the Lord, then our nation will experience revival. And so thank you for your time this evening. It's wonderful to have you.
Well, you said a lot right there. And you just said, I actually have a page, a group, People Over Politics. So, and we did a straw poll in there, and I think you'll be pleased with this result. So we had I have about 1,000 people on there. And if I can get 50 people to actually participate, and especially in a voting poll, because you're putting it out there, I know each of these people that voted for each of these people. Now, that's not public, but I know who they are.
Right.
So we had 11 votes for Curtis Hill at 23%. We had 3 votes for for Crouch at 6%. We had 4 votes for Doden at 8%. We had 2 votes for Braun at 4%. Oh, here's who's this Jamie Reitenour? She got 26 votes at 55%.
Yeah.
And then we had 1 vote for Brad Chambers. Now, to tell you,
It's 56% now.
what's that? Oh,
it's 56% now.
Oh yeah, did you just?
Oh, it just flipped. The 3 a.m. to the pipe burst.
The home team just voted there, but so and you think about these polls. They had that poll out that Braun was running away with it, but half of the people were undecided. And I'll tell you, in my poll, nobody was undecided, so they're making up their mind. So one quick question, then I want Joshua to come with a question. Are you noticing some momentum on your side of things?
Oh, definitely. We are noticing the momentum, and we planned it this way. The way that we operate, they have always asked, whenever we got through getting on the ballot, everybody wanted to know, how did you do it with like pennies on the dollar? And the reality is that if you are going to do politics in the United States of America, you have 2 choices. You can either rely on millions of dollars, or you can rely on the miraculous ground game. And I chose the second. And so because we operated in such a manner that chose to see signatures not as a burden, but as an equipping tool, you can imagine we have 6,000 people all over the state of Indiana immediately that we have talked to, that we have shared with, that said not just yes to, hey, yeah, we'll get her on the ballot, but many times those were conversations. And so not only that, but we didn't just have 6,000 signatures. We had over 8,000 signatures. They didn't approve a lot of our signatures. Nobody really knows that. So we've been laying a foundation, and knowing that we have that foundation, then we set out to lay another foundation. We got another round of support that came together in February, beginning of February. And we sent out our gatherers in February. So they've been working on the ground. Each of them are all over the state of Indiana. Each of them work in a different way. And so they're out getting their waymakers, their captains, their voters. So we've got the multiplication there. And then we really treated the election like you would a wedding, or even for me, I've had 5 babies. And so it's very much like a pregnancy. There's certain things that you can do to prepare, but there's certain things that you can't do until it's just time. And so that's very much how we've treated this election. We've had in this past week 100,000 postcards go out. We have 125,000 flyers that are going out all over the state of Indiana that everyone can participate in knocking on doors. We're on WIBC radio. We're going to be on 3 times a day. We've been on all week long after the debate. We did that on purpose. We've done a few online kind of starters for people. What we found is that it's wise, and this is very much a biblical principle, it's wise to keep people moving, right? So one of the things that we learned just as the body of Christ, one of the worst things that can happen is whenever we go stale, right? When we're not moving at all, that's not healthy. And just like a physical body, when you're not moving at all, it's not healthy. It's the same for spiritually as well. We find that same wisdom in this scenario as well. So we have moved people. So we moved everyone from our professional page. We actually had something nobody knew about. We had 9 district pages that were working all the time. So we've got everything you see on Facebook, but then we have our own private groups that have been working. So we transferred all those private groups to my personal Facebook page, my actual family page. Just keeping people moving, keeping people aware of what's going on, really prepped them for the debate. So we are seeing a lot of momentum on the ground. We've noticed, obviously, that the news is paying attention. We know that WIBC has been paying attention. And so we just see a lot of momentum, a lot of people that are getting the word out. And we tell people, tell 12 people to tell 12 people. If conservatives want to know how to win elections, we've got to come out of the mindset of just staying in our own private areas, because that's very conservative. And here's the thing. America should be that way, where we all can choose the way that we're going to live. That's the way that we want to live as conservatives. But we have to wake up to times that have changed. And so knowing that times have changed, we have to operate shrewdly. And so I tell people all the time, it's not just about I'll vote. It's not just about I'll tell my family. It's I'll vote, I'll tell my family. Tell 12 people to tell 12 people. And that's how you win elections. So yes, we do see the momentum.
Yeah, that was so you're actually having the momentum and pushing the momentum. So it's working hand in hand. Right. So yeah, that's awesome. And I remember Bobby Donahue, that I saw your signs on Lyndhurst over here. I'm like, what? Who is this? That's the first time I saw your sign. I'm like, Jamie Reitenour. And he had it up there like a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and two of them, and they blow down, and you put them back up, and I'm like, okay, so now that explains a lot right there. So Josh, what question might you fashion for this? And I see some other questions in the chat here, so we'll put some of those up. But I want to let Josh and Watson get some questions in.
Yeah, I was going to say during the debate, Jamie, I heard you mention the LEAP project, and I think I'm thankful you did, because that got some big conversation going on, especially within my family, because I've been trying to tell them for a long time. I'm like, they're trying to turn Lebanon and Boone County into a 15-minute city. That's a goal. We could get into that a little deeper later, maybe on another time, but maybe you can expand on your plans to maybe even get rid of that project, and how you plan to implement a replacement for it, and still keep the money within Indiana and Hoosier hands, as opposed to these outside sources.
Yeah, so LEAP is one of the better examples of government overreach right now. There's a few that are taking place all over the state. We see a lot in District 9 as well. But I can say that with LEAP, I think what is really amazing is what you have a situation where the state comes in and they're courting the people locally. So they're offering them 5 times or more what the land is worth, which is very hard for the everyday Hoosier to compete with. And then people are basically engaging themselves in this process because they see the opportunity. They sign contracts that are 2 years, 24 months, I think is what they said, the way they worded it. And many of them are in limbo because they signed these contracts that said that they would be able to have this 2-year period of time where people could, the state could opt in or opt out. So they've got these contracts that they signed. And then there was, they were actually annexed into the city in the process because there was a clause in there that a lot of them didn't know about. So the city kind of went out and said, hey, there's a majority of people that are agreeing to this project, and the project started. And then we see that they just had poor planning. And, is it unlike government to have poor planning? No. I mean, no, it's not. I mean, we just got out of COVID just a couple years ago. And so we all know that government does a poor job of planning. We know that if you give government an inch, they'll take a mile. And so what you have is you have them kind of courting this company in that's going to, invest billions of dollars. And then in the midst of that time, they realize that the company that they get in is not one that is going to be able to succeed without tons of water. And so there comes the big problem because they don't have the water. So they decide to cook up a solution for a pipeline that's going to be a multi-billion-dollar pipeline. If it's just $2 billion, that's $20 million a county in the state of Indiana. And in the process, they ignored the quality reports that said it would affect residents. They ignored EPA regulation. And so this has just been something that has gotten to the heart of many of the people that are in these communities. And they have not been listened to by the state. There's been local community support from government, but there has been a true lack of support from the state. And I think we can see why, right? Because Brad Chambers is on the debate stage. And one of the things that I said when I was on the debate stage, he was listing off all the counties. Oh, look at what we did here and look at what we did there. And I said, one of the counties you didn't mention was Boone County. What do you have to say to those people? Right. And I just love that he was quiet and didn't say a word, because when I was in Boone County, I was the one that had to listen to the husband that came forward and said, this is not our Indiana anymore. That is not acceptable. And so with my administration, the first thing we're going to do is fire everybody off of the IEDC board. We're going to appoint new board members that have an actual vision for the state of Indiana. That is what Hoosiers desire and not what billionaires desire. And then we're going to start putting a stop on all the projects where we see the government overreach. LEAP will be stopped immediately. We're going to shoot with two ways. One, we're going to look at drying up the IEDC. And so that will be a priority because we're going to audit the IEDC. And I just am telling Hoosiers right now that I don't expect to find good things.
Oh, no, you won't.
Right? So I don't expect to find good things.
Money in politics, what could go wrong?
And with the way that they're behaving, that there's good reason to believe that we're not going to find good things there. So my point is this: if there's information that we find that we don't want to put our name on, then I got to dry that up, because I'm not going to take on the activity that another administration did and put my name on that. I'm not doing that. So the first thing we're going to do is audit. We're going to stop the leak project. We're going to audit the IEDC. We're going to make the decision. Are we going to dry it up right now? Or do we have to look at all of these funds that we have? And do we need to rearrange those funds and put them somewhere else? What are the parameters for that? We've got to look at what kind of contracts. I can't speak as to what we would do very specifically, because I have to look at the contracts that the state's in with the partners that they've made. So whenever they sign these contracts, I mean, obviously the whole state would be under whatever governor is there at the time. And so whatever Holcomb signed, whatever they've agreed to, I have to see that. But I will tell Hoosiers this, everything will be out in front. I will bring every contract out for everybody to see. And I will say, according to this contract, this is what the state's obligated to. And then I'll be working with the Attorney General's office as to how we can get out of those contracts that are not favoring Hoosiers. So there's a lot that we need to do. I don't want to say that I'll take the money and rearrange it and do certain things with it until I figure out what strings come with that. So that's really the question. Whenever they said yes to the money, what else did they say yes to? And
yeah, there's always, it's like cockroaches. You see one out there and there's 20 more under the baseboard. And I think that's why you get left off of surveys. You get left out of debates because the establishment people do not like that. I don't think they like the fact that you're going to undo some of the stuff they're doing. But, it's a perfect example. This water grab, I mean, who's going to be down with that? I mean, and the thing is, all this, they need that water to cool these supercomputers and all this research and everything. And I'm all for research between here and Purdue. I mean, there's a lot of research that goes on there, but it can be done right, I think. So Watson, go ahead and let us hear what you have to say. I saw you were nodding your head up there like I was. So.
Well, I think the thing for me, I mean, I've been live broadcasting since 2010 and 2014. Sorry. And one of the things I've been arguing for the longest time is we need biblical candidates, not Christian candidates, biblical candidates. And this is very key because of the fact that we see a lot of people who are on the stage with Jamie calling themselves to be a Christian, but you see what's driving them more than anything else is money. And I know a lot of people right now, they feel like, oh, she just doesn't have a chance. The money is going to win. But I'm like, don't you guys read the Bible? You forget about 1 Samuel chapter 17 with David and Goliath? I mean, do we forget that God is the God of underdogs and he just changes things? So for my question for you, Jamie, is that sometimes the things that excites you that, you're basically laughing at whatever's being thrown your way because you already know what God can do?
I do. The Bible says that he gives us all measure of faith. And so what's happened is he's given me an enormous amount of faith. I am blessed that when the calling came, it was confirmed in so many different ways. I wasn't just confirmed at Panera with people walking up and telling me, you got to walk in this calling, and telling me I had a future and I needed to walk in it and let my past go and let the Lord renew my mind that I might approve the pure and acceptable will of God. It wasn't just by people on the outside coming in that had never met me before, but it was also by going all the way around the state as I got to know the pastors and their fellowships, as I began to speak to people about the fact that we're going to shrink government. And I put the pastoral on alert in the state of Indiana. I'm about to shrink government. And any conservative that's talking about shrinking government, that's not talking about the fact that the poor are going to need help, they aren't serious. They're not serious. They're not going to do it. Because there is no such thing as shrinking government and then just dropping all these programs where people are heavily dependent and walking away. That won't work. It won't work. It's not what the public wants. It's not what's right. And so whenever I went to the pastors, I went to them saying, hey, when I say I'm going to shrink government, I'm not playing around. So I need to know that you're ready. And I just love that so many of them were so real. They were honest. Some of them were like, I'm ready, but it's overwhelming. This is what I also love. As I went around the state, I'm so blessed to say and communicate to so many that don't know that the hands and feet of the Lord have been operating in the state of Indiana. So COVID really, it really jarred, right? A lot of us, it really woke a lot of us up. And in that process, I think many people began to just seek the Lord in a much deeper way. What I love is that in the body of Christ, the hands and feet during COVID were operating. So they were walking in the spirit. These are the servants of the body of Christ. These are the people that when you drop water, they immediately get down on the ground, start cleaning it up. These are the people that whenever you sit down, they're asking you if they can get you something. They're servants. That's their role in the body of Christ. And these servants have been out all over the state of Indiana. Many of them have stepped out in faith and started ministries. There are pantries. There are shelters. There are all kinds of people all over the state of Indiana that have been working on behalf of the Lord in this state. And so that excites me because that was also one of my confirmations that the body was ready. The body was ready for this move that needs to be made. The only way that the nation stops this crazy cycle of dependence on government is if the church stands in the way. She's the only one that can do it. She's organized.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah,
organized and she's selfless, right?
Yeah.
Whenever she's operating correctly, she's selfless. And
Yeah.
so that's the one that we're looking for.
One of the things that I was
I'd
talking
waiting for a groom.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that impressed me with Jamie is I was talking about OSHA and I was saying, boy, that needs to be done. And she says, well, you know what? When I win, I'll call you up. You can have an input in that. And that's, I'm living in Mars Hill. We have a floodplain here. I've been squawking for 2 years about this floodplain. Everybody's like, oh, he's going to talk about the floodplain. Well, Andre Carson finally got $1.3 million assigned to this thing, but they've been working on this for 10 years. And then they got a $10 million price tag. And I say, I could fix it for the 1.3 that Andre got. And they don't want to hear that because all their mouths won't get fed. So when you say shrink government, I say, where can we start? Where do I sign? All right, let's get to one of our guests, our viewers here. This is a question that I'm going to let come on in here. What will you do about the DEI in the Indiana GOP? The director wants reparations. What? She's already shaking her head. Look, Watson's laughing a little bit.
That's not my director.
Yeah.
That's Volker's director. That's not my director. No, I won't have a director of the DEI. In fact, the way that we're going to treat the DEI is we're going to first decentralize. We're going to be making sure that all parts of Indiana feel included. And we'll decentralize the DEI and put it all over the state of Indiana, specifically in our small towns that have felt like they really haven't been heard. We're going to go into those really small towns and we're going to put some offices in those smaller towns. And then we're going to change the name of DEI to ABC, which actually represents a better citizen. And as we change the name to a better citizen, we're going to start, then the programming is going to change to include the kind of education that is needed to become a better citizen. And we are going to be having volunteer veterans that we ask to come back. We love our veterans. We want to honor them. We just honor them tonight. We just acknowledge you, all of you that have served in the military and the United States of America. We are well aware that in the state of Indiana, they have kicked some of you out for not taking the vaccine. I want you to know that I will rectify that situation. I also want you to know that that was wrong. That should not have happened to you. That is not how we treat our military in the United States of America. And so we honor you tonight. But I will say that we are going to have our veterans come back into the ABC program. They're going to be learning about the Constitution and how to teach the Constitution. And then we're going to ask our veterans to come into our schools. And during Constitution Week, we're going to ask our veterans to start teaching the Constitution to our children because we are fighting a messaging battle here. And the best way to do that is for kids to be one-on-one with people and get to see them and hear their story and look at a person that actually made that sacrifice. So the DEI under the Reitenour administration will be ABC, which is a better citizen. And it will be, again, we're shrinking government, so it will be much smaller.
Darn it, I thought I was going to John Swanish you on that one and trick you, but you had it all figured out. But you mentioned education with veterans coming in. What, and you have Paige Miller, Moms for Liberty that's that's on that. And I'm just super impressed that you actually have that because I think education is the foundation of everything. I mean, of everything. What's that proverb that teach a child how to go and they'll go that way the rest of the way. I really butchered that up, but Josh could probably fix it. He's a better preacher than I am. But anyway, tell our viewers about the education because I know we had Paige on the Mouthwash show and some of my viewers are like, we want to hear from Jamie, but I'm like, well, you are hearing from Jamie because this is her education person. So give us a little lowdown on that.
Right. Well, good leaders don't come to you and tell you that they have all the answers. Good leaders say, I'm going to find the leaders that have the answers. And so what I do is I come to the state with vision. I tell you that this is Indiana goodness. Indiana goodness is do not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. And so it's my job to go out in the state and to find leaders that will take care of every single spot that has a Hoosier in it. And so that's what we're doing. We're looking for those leaders all over the state. And the first thing that I really, when I prayed about it, what the Lord laid on my heart was to start an education, to do everything in education in my preparation. And so I really looked into education in the state of Indiana. We are doing very poorly here. We have a 30% proficiency in reading and math. For 3rd through 8th graders, we have over 100,000 3rd through 8th graders that cannot read or do math and pass the I-Learn test. And so the Lord early on, he had Paige Miller, the head of the Hamilton chapter Moms for Liberty. Her and I crossed paths. She's got 30 years experience as a teacher, master's in administration. And so her and I have worked. And what people don't know is why my team was out all over the state of Indiana. Paige and I actually traveled all over the state of Indiana, and we went to libraries and we communicated the scores for those specific counties. We were there. So even when people weren't there, we were there. I didn't have to do that. I could have done it online and I could have just wrote something up, but I actually went and I went to your counties and I stood in your libraries so that you would know that we cared about your children. And Paige's ideas are amazing. K through 5, we're going to do a focus on academics, social emotional learning, critical race theory is out. 6th grade, we're going to be focusing on professionals coming in, the private sector coming in, adopting a classroom. And then they're going to talk about how AI technology and innovation has affected their profession, not because you have to depend on it, but because our goal is not just to catch Hoosiers up, which we have to, it's also to prepare them for the future. We're doing both at the same time. We do not want to leave them out of this obvious conversation that the workforce is going to change in 10 years. That's going to happen. And so we're bringing in the private sector in the 6th grade year so that they can hear those conversations. Let's talk to a farmer about how farmers are now completely dependent upon satellite. Let's have that conversation because not a lot of people know that. And then let's look 7th and 8th grade to bring in trade. We're going to really, I'm hoping that the good people of Indiana, that are generational people that are involved in trade, even these unions, I'm hoping that they'll see that now's the time. Now is the time to come together and do what's best for the children. We want to get some of these programs in. We want every senior to graduate having completed an apprenticeship in the state of Indiana. We want to train the workforce in the state of Indiana, and we are excited to do that. So yes, we have great plans in education, and I'm just excited to see all of that come to pass.
I didn't hear any mention. Now I'm an ADHD product. I took the 2nd grade twice because I couldn't cursive write, which if I was just born in the wrong decade or wrong century, even because that was a long time ago. But for ADHD, we got to have some gym class in there. Is that?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right, good.
Bringing gym class back. All of the things, what's crazy is I was telling my husband that I still remember when I was in 6th grade that we had to pass certain tests when we were in PE. And I'm
did somebody push ups and stood up? How about dodgeball? I mean, if you could dodge bench,
tetherball, that was another one.
That was a bloody nose sport. And then hang yourself with the rope. Yeah, that was tetherball's not for tall people. They cut you right down. So Josh, this is I can already say I've seen a couple comments in there. This is already better than the debate the other night. So, but honestly, in this kind of atmosphere, you get asked the questions that other people are wanting to know the answers to. It's relaxed. We're not trying to get you. People feel, feel good about this. And I really think that the guests we've done 170 shows on mouthwash, and I've only had one guest with a Lutheran pastor that got into it with Luther Brenton that was unhappy, and he eventually got happier. But pretty much people like being on the show because they felt comfortable and they really got your message out, and people can see how that person really is. It's not a written down, scheduled program. It's all good. So Josh, that being said, come up with a really good question and ruin the rest of the show.
Well, I can tell you this. I'm 98% conservative. I talked with John a little bit before the show about that. I'm 98% conservative. There's a few things that I'm a little more outside the lines on in that 2%. And one of the things is I think that tax is theft. And so
Lucy be after you. Yeah. You're a man after Lucy's heart.
So my question is the idea that, and I've heard that axe the tax line, which I think is all hoopla, but obviously, but what would your plan? Because I heard you talk about in the debate cutting taxes. What extent would that be, and what would that look like for the average Hoosier, like in their paycheck, and also maybe even property tax, wheel tax, that kind of thing, and the extension?
Well, there's two things that I think that we can do right away, right? First, we have to acknowledge that whenever Suzanne is talking about income tax and cutting the income tax in the state is already doing that. So everybody needs to know that that's already happening. The state legislature has already been chipping away at the income tax. So that's number one. Number two, she's saying axe the tax. And when she says axe, everybody thinks of like what that actually would mean, which is like completely cutting it out. But then quickly afterwards, she makes the statement that we would phase it out. So really, she's only saying what is actually happening right now, which they are doing a slow walk, very, very slow walk to trying to take income tax out of the state. As I've traveled the state of Indiana, that is not what Hoosiers want. So I really think it's important, and I talk about this with people when they ask me questions, because people will say, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And I say, be really careful, because when you ask me a question, you're asking government a question, right? And I'm a true conservative, and I'm for less government, right? So my answer should always lean in that direction. So as a person that's for less government, it's wise of me to listen on the ground to what Hoosiers are saying, because they're the boss. And what Hoosiers are saying is they have issue with property taxes. They don't have issue with income taxes. They have issue with property taxes. Let's talk about why. There are two reasons. Number one, school referendums. School referendums are out of control. And the visual messaging is horrible, because we're seeing these schools that look like colleges. Meanwhile, you've got Indiana, which is very much on a fixed income, a $37,000 median income, $68,000 per household, and I think that's high. Meanwhile, as they can barely afford to do renovations in their own home, they're seeing renovations done to these schools all over the place, and they're trying to figure out, why the heck am I paying for this college-like school to keep expanding? I can't afford that. And so one is the school referendums. They've gotten out of control. There's no accountability. Number two, the reason why people do not want property tax in the state of Indiana is because the people of the state of Indiana are like many Americans right now that believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. Many Americans feel like there has been a breach. They feel like there's been a breach. When we come together as Americans in our state, and all over the United States, we come together and we say, we all agree on this document. The reason why our societies function the way they do, the reason why our communities are strong, the reason why we are a healthy nation is because we all agree on this document. And yet they feel as if the government has not been operating as if it agrees with the Constitution. They feel as if the government has become the elite. The government is no longer listening to the people. The government is, here's your crumbs while we go take the cake and eat it too. And they're tired of it. And more importantly, they're noticing that attitude is now been combined with a government overreach. And that government overreach is actually getting into their land.
Yeah.
And so because the government has taken their elitist attitude, which we knew was there, which we saw prevalent in COVID, and then taken it in the state of Indiana and told people, we're going to shove our projects in your face. We're going to be in District 9 with Link 101, and we're going to promise $200 million to save 6 to 8 minutes when the other highway that we're using has had no fatalities in 5 years. Because we've decided that we're going to do that. Forget your families, forget all of the generations that you've taken time, forget the natural topography of the area and the fact that it's totally different and the estimate's probably going to be way higher. Forget all that. We're the elite and we're making a decision for you. It is that attitude that has left the Hoosier feeling like there has been a breach. And that is why they are saying, we don't want you anywhere near our property. And so this is not something that you can dismiss. This is not something you can dismiss. This is not something that people need to keep dodging. I am right in the middle of this conversation. And because I'm a leader that wants to actually see something be successful, I have set up a successful way to deal with this situation. I have said on May 8th, when I'm elected as the Republican primary candidate, I will start my tour all over the state of Indiana, meeting with 92 counties. We will come together, county commissioners. We will speak to townships as well. And we will have an on-the-record conversation about what we are going to do in the state of Indiana about property tax. And I will be the one driving that conversation. I will be the one saying to them, we need to figure out another way. I am not coming to the table asking you your opinion. That is not what I'm doing. I am coming to the table as the elected Republican primary candidate telling you that the majority has selected me, which means what I have heard, you have to listen to. And so since the majority has spoken, you have to listen to the fact that they are saying property taxes need to go away. So now let's talk about how we reallocate funds. Let's talk about what your counties actually need. Let's talk about infrastructure, sewer, and water. Let's have a real good conversation about how we as the state of Indiana can work as a state for borders, but not boundaries. We want to work together as the state of Indiana. We want to say counties come together. Why do an engineering design committee that's going to look at the sewer in one county when it looks very much like the other county? Why have two counties paying for the same thing? Why not pair up together? We can work together in the state of Indiana to make this a lot less expensive for the taxpayer. And so I'm going to be having that conversation. I look forward to it. And I firmly believe that we have good people working in our local government. I believe they want to have this conversation. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with them. So that's my plan for taxes. I think an easy way, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. I think coming to the legislator and saying 65 and older should not pay taxes in the state of Indiana. I think that's a good way to slide it in and start the conversation at the state level. But importantly, it has to start at the local level. Oh,
I got 2 more years to 65. Come on. So you mentioned sewers. Watson, you got the next question on deck here. I sat in front of the IURC for 8 hours to get my sewer permit district. And and my sister and brother-in-laws, they have a big sewer utility down in Bright, Indiana. And it's just a nightmare. And you want to talk about a political bunch of Pharisees in that deal. It is that. It's very expensive to sit there with your attorneys and your accountants for a day. I think it cost me $5,000, I think, in those, and that was cheap. And I did get it done, but I look back on those days and I wonder how. So this is some of this red tape that eliminates people from fixing a lot of problems. And we don't have a lot of consistency in the state from county to county. And you're right. It all runs downhill. That's what they say. A plumber's saying is it runs downhill and we get paid on Friday.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, John, when you mentioned sewer, people should know I've represented my family in court for 3 years. And
so you know about how much
oh my goodness. It was all about sewer. It was all about sewer. And I represented my family in court for 3 years pro se. I did over 50 filings. The judge in the trial court was Patrick Dietrich, which is Judge Dietrich is also the judge that was there for the general session for the General Assembly versus Governor Holcomb whenever they were fighting over special session. The judge that was over that was the same judge that I had for my case. And then afterwards, in my last hearing, he went on the record and said that I had represented my family and my case and prepared the case better than lawyers he had seen on both sides in the time that he had served. And so that was a compliment that the Lord allowed. The Lord gave grace and wisdom. And then I also filed an appeal. So my case is in the appeals court. You have to go and ask them for it because they didn't want to put it on the case summary, which is hilarious. But
yeah, they'll do that.
It is in the appeals court. And so Reitenour is in there. You can look up our name. I've done that for the last 3 years. I've been in court doing that. And so there are times when we stand, it is exhausting, but now's the time to work.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised how many people will fight over poop. I mean, there's a lot of money. They call it black gold for a reason. Well, that's oil. This is brown gold. Brown gold, black gold. I get them mixed up,
Oh, so
Watson, bail me out here. Bail me out. I'm going down the sewer here on this deal.
From Chicago to Denver to Kansas City, New York, as well as LA, you see a lot of these states that they're basically trying to woo illegal immigrants into their cities and give a lot of money over to them. And how do we balance compassion, but at the same time, too, make certain that we're not neglecting the Hoosiers that are in this state who need help? And it's not like we can't share compassion, but there has to be a balance where they just don't feel that they can come here and get a free ride.
It's the hardest question by far. It's the hardest question.
Way to go, Watson.
Oh yeah, no, it is. I'll start by saying that I spent a lot of time in prayer about it, that I have sought the Lord and asked him for wisdom, that there was a point in time where I said, Lord, I've been asking. I don't see it yet. Where is it? How do you know that you have wisdom from the Lord? The Bible describes heavenly wisdom as pure and peaceable, unbiased, and willing to yield. And so I don't want to be a person that's moved by emotion. I want to be a person that's wise. Right now, priority one, the border has got to be fixed. It's got to, in my opinion, as a governor of the state of Indiana, my encouragement to the president would be to close the border for a year. I'm not saying when it comes to trade and those kinds of necessary things, but I am saying that I think that it would be wise from an immigration standpoint to close the border for a year. I think the governors of the states have to go into their states and get a good account of what's taken place because the irresponsibility of the current federal government. So that's number one. We've got to close the border. Number two, governors have to come together. So the states have to be strong. We have to have a unified agreement as to how we're going to move forward. I think that right now it would be wise of the Conservative Party to look ahead. I'm so tired of the Conservative Party making decisions that are in the moment and not actually thinking about what that's going to mean in the future. Everything tends to be for the conservatives, what is good to get elected. And then when it comes to actually walking it out, we don't do a good job of walking it out. And that's one of the reasons why so many voters were attracted to President Trump, because he came to the table and he said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to walk it out. It's going to look like this, right? For every regulation you put in, two have to be cut. I mean, he was giving very practical understanding. And that's the exact same way that we have to approach immigration. We have to say, look, we believe in following laws. That's an important thing in our country. We also have to acknowledge that because we've had a president that's basically opened the border and said, everybody come over, and has done a horrible job of trying to make sure that the people that are coming over legally. We are now in this space in our country that's very, very tense, and it's not in the Constitution as to how to handle it. So we're outside of that. So how do we wisely go into that? I believe that, number one, the Conservative Party should immediately if we're going to put money towards it, let's put money towards a fast track for legal immigration. Let's reward people that have waited legally. Let's think this through. Come on. I'm like, this is an opportunity for us to make a decision that's going to reap fruit, support voters all through the future, because we're standing for a principle that America loves. We love immigration. We just want it legally. And so I think the Conservative Party needs to, number one, do a fast track for legal immigration. If you've waited on it for a visa, if you have a visa, if you have an employment authorization document, these are people that have waited legally. We should fast track these people and reward them for waiting legally. Then I think after we do that, we should have a very real conversation about, do we logistically believe that we can round people up and put them at the border? Is that a real conversation? In the state of Indiana, I'm not aware of money that we have sitting around to be able to afford something like this. Last time I checked, Suzanne Crouch lost $1 billion. So we are in a place where we need to ask a question. Will we support in Indiana the federal government? Absolutely. Will we support if there is a situation where someone is stopped illegally? Will we report that if our law enforcement is making that stop? Sure, I think that that's wise to do, to work with our federal partners. But is it wise to say that we're going to round people up? I'm approaching this from a different perspective, and I feel like that it's good for all governors to come to the table and bring their perspectives, because we want iron sharpening iron. We do not want yes people. That is not what governors are. I am not a yes person. I'm a person that comes and asks for wisdom. And so one of the things that I would bring forward is, in the state of Indiana, it is good to understand the way the immigration system works right now. We have, in the United Nations, we have certain people that work, that are families of people that work in the government, and they are given employment authorization documentation. And that documentation allows them to work, but it does not allow them to be a citizen. It does not allow them to be a citizen. it does require when they work that they pay federal tax and state tax. It also requires that if they were to get into trouble criminally, they are prosecuted. So I think that we should think about, is it wise to make sure that everybody has an employment authorization document and has to pay the fine for that so that they are on the record and they are paying taxes? That is important. And when I say that understanding that would require people to come forward. They could pay the fine, because again, we're not talking about citizenship in any way, shape, or form right now. We are talking about people paying a fine, having an employment authorization document, and with them paying that fine, let's just say you had 1 million people that were here illegally in the state of Indiana, and you charged $500 for the processing of that employment authorization document. That's $500 million that Indiana would take in, but not one time touched a taxpayer. And with that $500 million, do you know what I can do as governor? I can revive the small towns of the state of Indiana. And you know why that's wise? Because I've been in those small towns. I've already knocked on their doors. I already have small towns waiting. I've talked about immigration with people in the state of Indiana. I've talked about how it's being done. They disagree it should be done illegally, and I agree with that. It has to be done legally, but they also acknowledge that there's many people in their communities, and so what are we going to do? I've been on the ground, and I think that this is one of the wise solutions to come forward. Would I support our federal partners? Absolutely. Do I support the President of the United States saying this must happen legally and we must close the border? Absolutely. And I'll go one step further. If you need help on the wall, as governor of the state of Indiana, I have been speaking with the Amish community. I have not asked them this, but I sure as all get out would love to. If you need excellent workers that are good craftsmen, we have the Amish in the state of Indiana. And I am for darn sure those people could build that wall rather quickly.
The Amish wall. There wouldn't be any electricity on it, but hey, it'd be a good wall. I say we don't want to trip anybody up on our show, but I feel like I want to try to trip you up because you prepared all of this. You're just so prepared, and you use the word wisdom, and you back it up. So you mentioned that Reagan in 1986 had amnesty for 3 million immigrants, and we see where that went in the 90s. Clinton, he did send back some people. I know here in town, like Custom Concrete lost 40 employees that were Simpson motorcycle helmets. They shipped some people back. That didn't seem to work, but I think ever since this century, it's just been, all right, we're just coming on in. So I think eating the elephant a bite at a time is a very good answer, because this problem didn't happen overnight. And you mentioned that the conservatives are reactive when a good conservative is proactive. And I think sometimes we want to label ourselves something, but then we don't really want to be the label. So I'm not a label myself. But we're getting really close. We got 5 minutes left. If we have anybody in the chat, you got a question, you better get it in now. Otherwise, I'm going to let Josh, you've been dominating the conversation for the last 15 minutes. But I'll let you have another question. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, instead of a question, I want to make a statement. I think Donald Trump made a bad call in endorsing Mike Braun, and I think we could change it right here. We can change that right here, right now. We could actually change that right here, right now. Believe it or not. They say the radical left, they done stepped in it. They stepped in it hard, and they stepped in it heavy. They should have picked Jamie Wright. They should have picked Jamie Wright now as their adversary. I'm telling you, she's coming for him. She's coming for him, and I think I'm going to change my endorsement tonight, folks. Okay, I'm going to change it, folks. They said, Sir, you got to change your endorsement. I said, why I got to change my endorsement? So, well, Mike Braun, he's no good. He's no good. He's a rhino all the way. So tonight, I'm going to announce it right here. Jamie Reitenour, you got my endorsement.
Let me do my Mike Braun imitation.
That was great. That was great.
I'll tell you, that was a good one.
I've been doing that for a while now. I actually dressed up as Trump a few times.
It took you a minute to get going on it, but I knew where you were going with that. That was almost as good as a good question. It was very good.
Let Arnold now speak.
Oh, Arnold. What do you have, Arnold? Tell us what you think.
You got to go to the polls and vote for Jamie Reitenour. It is your imperative decision to vote for the best candidate in Indiana. Jamie Reitenour is the governor of Indiana. You better vote for her, or we will throw you out of the chopper. Vote for Jamie Reitenour now. Anything else? She's the best option for Indiana. Do not take Braun or the other people who are a waste of our time. Vote for Jamie Reitenour now.
All right. Well, we've had Trump and we've had Arnold. We need to have Kermit the Frog.
Okay.
Kermit the Frog here. I think you should be voting for Jamie Reitenour. She's almost as good as Miss Piggy. And we will be having Jamie Reitenour on The Muppet Show next week. Thank you very much.
So there you go. You didn't know we were that talented, this group.
That is great. That is impromptu.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. You guys
More
should do this again. This is great.
Yeah, well, and you've been a great sport. I talked to you about coming on the Mouthwash Show when they counted you for the debate and all that. And you came right on, and we had you scheduled on later. And then I asked about Paige Miller, and you brought her out here. So you are walking the talk, and that's a good thing. This has been great. This has been great fun. And
Yes,
viewers, this was Jamie's idea. I mean, I know Watson and I know Josh a little bit, but when she said those two guys, I said, well, I don't want to ruin their reputations, but I will if I need to. I was honored.
We do it all by
feel
ourselves,
fortunate.
I'm sure.
Yeah, well, those invitations are probably going to get to, I'll tell you guys, it's pretty good at that.
Well, I'll tell you this. You guys are good brothers, and you have done the hard work. The Bible says in Galatians 6:9, let us not be weary in doing good, for at the proper time we shall reap a harvest if we do not give up. And so I thank you for your commitment to truth. I thank you that you're giving people truth. They are listening. They are spreading the word. Continue. I am so excited to be on this journey, to have you guys with me. When we have our press conferences, local press in the front, national press in the back, you guys will have a seat at the table.
We'll be the Keystone Cops or the Three Stooges. We got plenty of names we can throw in there.
Yeah.
I like this. I like the verse, the harvest is plenty and the laborers are few. So that is a lot what we have here. So folks, I do think I do have the ending of this fine show lined up here, and we are right on schedule. Unbelievable.
Great
Jamie,
job.
thanks for coming on. Watson, it's great seeing you again. Josh, I look forward to seeing you guys' show. You catch Watson on Mojo Radio 5.0, and he's on every day around 7 o'clock. I don't know how you do that. And then Josh, you're on. Tell our viewers when you're on, when yours is recorded, but when does it go?
Well, my show, Faith, Family, and Politics, normally drops on Saturday mornings, sometime in the early AM, probably like 2 a.m. But it's, it's pre-recorded. So, but we also have our other shows. So you can check all of our programming out at revolverbroadcasting.com. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere you download your audio podcasts.
Awesome.
All right, that's great. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you on all of our shows. Watch them, like them, follow them, all that good stuff. Vote for Jamie. Yay. All that. So everybody, peace out.
Tell 12.